All right, we have coming up next the last presentation of the day before the very exciting panel to follow that. And so all that stands between that panel, which is moderated by Amir, and right now is Amir again, so Amir is going to talk about the alphabet soup of networking security, understanding SD-WAN, SSE, and SASE. And those of you who saw the presentation earlier this morning, Karsten kicked it off, and now we're going to end it off with the bookend. Amir is going to talk about it. You can decide who did a better job, and you can tell them after that. But let's get Amir up here, and then after that, he's going to moderate a very exciting panel, so do stay for that. All right, Amir?
Thank you very much, Roy. So I'll put my timer up because otherwise Roy will... I'm joking. So we can switch over. Thank you. My name is Amir Zmor. I'm the CEO of FlexiWAN. Roy used to say the first and only open source SD-WAN. Yeah, you create the new one. Okay, so let's get going. We just need the presentation up. Managed. So I'm going to talk about, as it says, the alphabet soup of networking and security. And it's not just understanding SD-WAN, SSE, and SASE. It's also talking about the deployment models. And that's why it's kind of continuation to what you heard in the morning. And I can say that over the last several years, there is kind of an inflation of acronyms, right? We had SD-WAN, SASE, SSE. And the question is, what is the holy grail? What should everybody strive for? Okay, or maybe there isn't. Okay, so it's like a competition between all of these acronyms, and we hear all the vendors talk about them. Mine is better. So let's go back a little bit in history or talk about the evolution. So once upon a time, we had MPLS. MPLS gave us point-to-point, was fixed, usually pretty expensive. That's why the service providers have a hard time saying kind of goodbye to it or seeing it declining. And at the end of the day, it serves the network requirements of the past because it doesn't connect to the cloud services. So it's not as that MPLS has gone away. It's still here, but it comes along with other solutions. And then we got SD-WAN. SD-WAN, first of all, is an application-aware networking system that gives us site-to-site and site-to-cloud connectivity. It's more agile, or at least supposed to be more agile, flexible, usually also more cost-effective. Although that was the beginning. At the beginning of SD-WAN, all the people spoke about being more cost-effective. Then they realized that it's not always cheaper, but it's better in many, many ways. If we talk about the 4 pillars of the benefits of SD-WAN versus the traditional networking, we can start with moving from dedicated hardware to general-purpose white box solutions. Again, this is the desire. In reality, when you look to the market, you will see that there are some vendors that offer you SD-WAN solution in their box, completely dedicated. You cannot install in that box anything else. Or it's a box, you cannot take it to a virtual environment. There are still these type of solutions, but I think the majority of the market options that you can see do allow you to run it on a virtual or on a white box. Second, central management. It's clear. Gone are the days that you need to go and configure each one of the routers. Using general purpose lines, broadband LTE instead of the fixed lines that are usually more expensive and are not agile, and that's the solution of the past. Much more agility to the network itself and connectivity to cloud services. If we look at an example of the network, then what we see here is like an example of an enterprise with several branch offices, retail shops. We can see that there are options in the network. Okay, you can have a hub to connect the retail shops, and the branch offices also connect to the hub, but they also connect between themselves. And there's also connectivity to all kinds of cloud services, if it's public services like AWS, SaaS services like Salesforce, and private cloud. And of course, the central management. But the most important word in this slide is what? Example. It's just an example. You can have many architectures of the network. You, the service provider or the enterprise, you decide what's the architecture of the network. You decide if there's direct connectivity between the branches or not. You decide if somebody can go directly to the internet or they need to go through a hub. So there's much more flexibility in the network architecture. So if we try to summarize SD-WAN, SD-WAN replaces the traditional WAN that was kind of on-prem focused, and SD-WAN enables the realization of the digital transformation. It connects users to applications in a secured and a reliable way, usually also more cost effectively. It is application aware, as I mentioned before, so it allows you to make decisions, routing decisions, priority decisions that are based on the business decisions. It's a nice word to say just, priority of applications and things like that. These are business decisions at the end of the day. I prefer a sales voice call versus, I don't know, somebody else from engineering watching YouTube. And it utilizes the internet, broadband, wireless, and optionally some dedicated backbones. And we have companies here in the show that offer exactly this backbone. Continuing in the evolution, 2019, Gartner came out with SASE. If I talk about what Carson talked about in the morning, so zero trust, for example, is a term that was coined even before, way before. And actually, Forrester is the first one that took it to this type of implementation. Then Gartner came out with something different. Okay, what it gives us is site to backbone to cloud connectivity. Backbone is very important. I'm not sure it was mentioned strongly enough before. I'll talk about it a bit later as well. It's a silo, and we'll see it when we talk more details exactly what SASE means. And it's a single vendor in the kind of theoretical, let's call it, definition or recommendation. Typically, it's more expensive. So what happened was that when SASE was coined in 2019, very quickly on the hype cycle of Gartner of 2020, it was at the top, very, very top of inflated expectations, meaning it was very, very quickly. It jumped all the stages on the left side of the hype cycle all the way to the top. Reality was that vendors offered multiple options, not necessarily the theoretical recommendation, but all kinds of options. And service providers offered to their enterprise customers all kinds of deployment models and architectures, and not necessarily that single silo. So market voted actually for more differentiation, needed change. Okay, and the reasons for that is because the enterprises and the service providers want more control over the network architecture. They want to control the routing. They don't want somebody else to dictate that this is the only routing option. The routing option of SASE says that everything goes from the edge, either it's a device of the user, the laptop, or it's the site, the office branch, to the closest POP of that vendor who is actually now a service provider, through or on the backbone of that vendor to the cloud security, from there to any other POP, and from there to the destination, which can be the internet or can be another site or another device of another user. Maybe you want some other architecture. Maybe you want a few more vendors in this and not a single vendor. Maybe you want some different features to bring in, to add more capabilities. And maybe you want to control the cost structure of the hardware and software. You don't necessarily want to be tied to a single option of that single vendor. So that's how SSE came along. Actually, the market voted for more variety. And what Gartner did at the end of the day is took an existing solution. Okay, I think SSE was coined in 2021. If I remember correctly, Zscaler was founded a bit before 2021. I'm not sure. Okay, and what it did, it took what we saw in the market of the cloud-delivered security and gave it a nice name. So what is SSE at the end of the day? It's a cloud-centric or cloud-delivered security that includes the elements that Carson mentioned in the morning, the Zero Trust, Secure Web Gateway, the CASB, and the Firewall as a Service. All of these, one vendor, one solution in the cloud. And if we look at the initial definition of SASE by Gartner, it defines the following three elements. SD-WAN, we said, application-aware, policy-based, and secured routing, centrally managed, and network interface agnostic. The SSE that we just defined before. And here comes the backbone. Okay? And the backbone, as I said before, means that all traffic needs to be delivered over that backbone. There's no direct internet access, okay? You cannot watch YouTube directly. It needs to go through that backbone, security in the cloud, and everything, okay? Maybe some would like it, but not necessarily everybody would like it. This is what is considered a single vendor SASE, okay? And this is a silo. It's locked. You cannot, if you go based on this recommendation, you cannot break it into various vendors or parts or have different routing policies. And then, in April this year, Gartner came with another document that talks about 3 architectural models of SASE, and they talk about the single vendor. That's what we saw on the previous slide. They also talk about a dual vendor. And what is a dual vendor? So by the way, SD-WAN plus SASE, SD-WAN plus SSE does not equal SASE, okay? Because SD-WAN plus SSE is still missing the backbone. So in the dual vendor option, what they say is that the backbone would come from the SSE vendor, and the SD-WAN will be tightly integrated with it. And there is a third option. And the third option talks about all the rest, I call it. All the rest because it's a use case specific one. And I added here hybrid and open. And I think that for more than 3 years, I've been showing this slide and preaching this before this document of April, okay? Because when we look at the deployments and the enterprises, and again, I go back to Carson's presentation from the morning, okay? He mentioned things like, not everybody can afford SSE. Not everybody can afford the full SASE solution. Not everybody needs all of these things. There is variety. Enterprises of different sizes, service providers of different sizes have different requirements. And what I'm showing here is a more open type of architecture that, on one hand, has the cloud-delivered security, and everything goes through it, okay? These are just lines that come from each one. They don't have direct connection between them, okay? Everything goes through that cloud security. But there are more options, and these more options give you the ability to define the routing policy. Maybe the IT of the company or the service provider decides that for some applications, they want to allow direct access to some of the services, okay? And for that, you probably need some security at the edge. If you want to have direct internet access, then you already do need some security at the edge. You cannot count on it that everything goes through the cloud, but you would save a lot of cost with the backbone and the security in the cloud that needs to process all of these packets. And we have the users from home that maybe they can only connect directly to the cloud-delivered security through that, or maybe they can have direct access to some of the resources. All of this routing should be pushed to the edge. The routing policy and decisions should be pushed to the edge. Once they're pushed to the edge, you have much more flexibility of your solution. Another thing, interesting thing, is cloud or public cloud delivered WAN, meaning to utilize the backbone and the cloud resources of the large cloud providers. Think of Google, Amazon, and all of those. Okay, Amazon introduced the AWS Enterprise Cloud WAN, okay, AWS Cloud WAN, which is basically very similar to this. This is more of a Google type of deployment that we partnered on, okay? And the idea is that you can have an SD-WAN solution deployed at the edge, deployed on the laptop of the users, or maybe just some VPN or other more sophisticated connectivity. Oops, sorry. And you have this also installed in the cloud, so you can deliver applications that are installed in the cloud in a secure and a high-quality way. But you also use the backbone of these providers that can connect you to these applications, so they can give you site-to-cloud application connectivity. They can give you site-to-site connectivity. So now you can connect from one site to the other site, utilizing the backbone of that cloud provider. So, in conclusion, who is the winner? I don't think there is a winner. As we said, for SASE, there can be many, many options. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's never that. Enterprises have different requirements, and service providers as well. They can afford different things, and they need different things. There needs to be room for more choice of the vendors, of the technologies, to add different technologies to the system. And there is no one architecture to rule them all. We saw those 3 deployment models, but the third one is actually anything that is not covered by the first 2 of the single vendor or dual vendor. And the market actually, from my point of view and from what we see, voted for something that is has more variety in it. That's it. Thank you very much. The idea was to leave time for the panel.
I know.